Hi, good morning, everyone. Hi, welcome to this morning's forum titled Disinfection, What's Needed, What's Not. So before we start this morning's proceedings, let's watch a video prepared by one of our partners, X-Ways Berhad. This video basically will just give everyone some views of some members of the industry with regards to disinfection. So just take a minute to relax, and we will play this 5-minute video. Yeah, enjoy.
Yes, for the first time when this COVID-19 case increased in Malaysia, so it was very hard time to find disinfection service chemical.
Kalau musim PKP ni memang susah kita nak dapat benda-benda ni semua. So kalau nak dapat benda yang kualiti, kita kena survey dulu. Kita kena cari distributor yang betul-betul.
Opinion, sanitization is a technique that is used to reduce the pathogen or microorganic pathogens to a level where they can be harmful. And for sterilization, it is a natural or scientific method used to eradicate any pathogens from a surface or an item. For disinfection, it is an approach to reduce the number of microorganisms that are actively reproducing and increasing from a concentrated level to a level where their presence is so minimal that they can't cause disease or illness to a healthy individual.
Apa yang saya tahu, sterilization ni kita macam menyakuman untuk peralatan atau equipment. Kita gunakan macam alkohol lah. Kalau macam disinfectant ni kita guna quaternary ammonium yang tidak memudahkan lah. Maknanya dia just pecahan untuk disinfectant. Kita nyakuman semua kuman tu. Lepas tu kalau untuk sanitasi ni kita macam kita lap hampai meja tu, lebih kurang tong berpintu.
Okay, pathogen is like a microorganism, like how to say, like can cause disease. Example like bacteria, virus, and also now you can see like COVID-19.
Melalui kefahaman saya, patogen ni adalah sejenis organisma yang mana yang boleh menyebabkan penyakit ataupun menyebabkan penyakit. Biasanya patogen ni akan ada perumah. Ia adalah seperti virus, bakteria, fungus. Seperti yang terdekat ni adalah seperti virus COVID-19 yang
So basically, when we're looking at disinfectant products, actually we have to look into not just our staff safety, right, and also the demand from the customer. Because in the market now, there's so many products, disinfectants product in the market. So there's a few key questions that customer always ask. Well, number one, is this chemical certified by any government body, especially Malaysia? So they're looking for the answer like KKM. Is this chemical being certified by KKM? If we can't give KKM certifications, then the customer will ask, so what else countries or government that certify your manufactured product disinfectants? So we can look into like Singapore, US EPAs, right, FDA. So all these are certified only for safety of chemicals.
For the chemical test report, usually we look for the residual activity, safety, and microbe range, penetration, and preparation of the chemical.
Firstly, I will see the active ingredients. What kind of ingredients? Let me look at the AI lah. So second thing, that is corrosive or not. Sometimes I can't use for metal. Sometimes when we use for metal, will be rusty, something like that. And one more thing, alcohol or non-alcohol. Because some place we cannot use this thing for like electric. I mean, sometimes computers, you know, the keyboard you want to wipe, you cannot use alcohol chemical. So like that. And one more thing, safe for human and environment, I know.
kita refer pada chemical report ataupun SDS lah kan. Kita akan, yang firstly yang akan kita tengok dia punya active ingredient lah, sebab tak semua AI boleh digunakan untuk nyakuman kan. Lepas tu kita tengok dia punya effect pada, maksudnya corrosiveness pada surface. Sebab yang ni concern customer lah. Sebab ada pernah yang kalau tersalah guna, dia buat leather tu warna putih atau rosakkan cat pada surface kan. Kemudian kita tengok dilution lah. Sebab dilution ni pun penting untuk pastikan kita tak exceed budget ke apa benda kan.
Okay, kalau biasa SDS, kita main fokus untuk AI dia punya active ingredient. Lepas tu kita akan semak balik ingredient tu ada tak kelulusan dari KKM. Lepas tu kita juga cari dia punya expiry date, manufacture date. Lepas tu kita kalau kita akan tengok dia punya tested animal, dia tested on animal apa. Kadang-kadang customer akan tanya question ni semua, so kita kena belajar benda tu. Lepas tu kita akan tengok modul dia punya safety.
Okay, just like to thank Mr. Harry Chia from X-Ray for preparing that video. So just before we begin, I'd like to lay down some ground rules for all attendees. With regards to questions that you may have for the panelists, please just use Zoom's Q&A functions. If you're using Zoom from a browser or using the Zoom application, there should be a Q&A button there which you can click on, which will allow you to put in questions. So what happens is when you are typing in your questions, please address the panelists that you like to ask a question to, so that we can direct it to the right person. And also for everyone who is attending, do vote for the best questions that you want to hear answered live during the forum. And at the end of this the session, we will get the panelists to answer your questions live. But don't worry, for those of you whose questions were not voted, we will get the panelists to answer after the forum, and we will probably send all their answers to everyone in an email. So without much ado, I'd like to pass the time to Ms. Karen Lee, who will be hosting today's session. So Ms. Karen, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for spending your time with us. On this beautiful morning, we have managed to invite 5 panelists to be the speakers of our forum titled Disinfection, What's Needed, What's Not. COVID-19 is actually a viral infectious disease caused by SARS-CoV-2 and is currently declared as a the World Health Organization. As of July 2020, 10 million people have been infected globally with over 500,000 deaths caused by the virus. The virus that causes COVID-19 is mainly transmitted through droplets generated when an infected person coughs, sneezes, droplets generated or exhales. These droplets are too heavy to hang in the air and quickly fall on floors or surfaces. Infection can be caused by breathing in the virus when in close proximity of someone who has COVID-19, or by touching your eyes, nose, or mouth after coming into contact with contaminated surfaces. Before we begin, please post your questions anytime in the Zoom chat window, and we will answer your questions at the end of our session. I would like to remind once again, when you are posting your questions, please write the name of the panelist you would like to direct your question to. So it's time to talk to our first panelist, Encik Hisham, who is the president of Malaysia Pest Management Association, MPMA. Encik Hisham, can you please share with us about how has the industry adapted to the COVID-19 outbreak in terms of methodology responding to this scenario?
Thank you very much, Karen. Good morning all. Salam sejahtera to everyone. I think I have seen a lot of PCOs in the attending this event. First and foremost, let me take this opportunity to thank the organizer for taking this initiative to hold this webinar. I think this is the first webinar on the disinfecting and sanitation, and it should be a good platform for everyone to share information, at the same time observing the current SOP. I think everyone knows that the pandemic has been here since late last year. It only triggers us when the government announced the MCO sometimes in March, and everyone starts to feel the gravity and the seriousness of the situation. It was unprecedented, and I think no one is prepared for anything. And for once, basically, there's a stigma feeling developed around us, all right? Because everyone is a suspect, and everyone, try to avoid getting infected. And having said that, the next thing that we know is that we do self-quarantine, and basically we stay at home, and we want somebody to do disinfecting jobs at our workplace as well as our home. And if I can share with you, I think if Chris can help me to put up the slides, generally, the pest control operators adapt the situation very well. Chris, can I have the slides, please? The first slide. Chris is not here. Okay, basically, how we adapt is we are supposed to show you a slide. It's basically we adapted very well because the PCO all this time observe the rules and regulation under the PCO rules 2004. And generally, if you can see on the slides, why we should be the primary service provider, because we are adapting well, because we know what we are doing in terms of application as well as selecting the right pesticide, or in this case, the right disinfectant. All right. I just give you a quick highlights what is PCO rules and regulation 2004 is all about. It's part of the rules regulations under the Parent Act, Pesticide Act 1974. So under this, the pengendali, or what you call the pest control operator, PCO, or now we want to be known as pest management professional. That's why we changed our association from PCAM, Pest Control Association, to Malaysian Pest Management Association. And generally under these rulings, which is under the purview of Ministry of Agriculture, every one of us, the pest control operator, has to know a little bit on the biology, the application, the safety aspect, the selection of pesticide, and so forth. And having said that, I'm certain, coming back to your question just now, how well the PCO adapts to the scenario. Certainly, we are there. We know what we are doing. I hope that I answer you, Karen. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Encik Hisham. But what kind of challenges were faced by the industry in selecting the best tools and chemicals in offering disinfection services? And how did the industry overcome these challenges?
Oh, when we talk about challenges doing this disinfecting jobs, I think during just now we see a short video. Some of our friends out there has highlighting problems and challenges or issues that they have encountered in the early stage of this disinfecting service. But the most important is that we were so used of controlling and managing pests, which is visible to our naked eyes, but now we are dealing with something that we cannot see. It's a microbe. Basically we cannot see anything. And on top of that, we know that there's so many disinfectant in the market, all right? And I think in the early stage, sometimes in April, we saw Bomba or even the DBKL did the job with some this Dettol or Clorox mixture, and it's quite confusing for all of us. And on top of that, we also have to reinvent our service energy. We normally use misting, we normally use residual spray, now we have to incorporate wiping as part of the services in doing the disinfecting and sanitation job. And of course, we need to ensure that our service team do the right things, because we don't want to leave any nook or corners left untreated, or because that will result on further contamination. And of course, the biggest challenge of all is that when we deal with pesticide, we deal with some amount of residual activity, and none of these happen to be incorporated in any of this disinfectant. So in other words, the disinfectant does not give out or act as a preventive measures. So we need to have to do regularly, which some customers believe and think that is not economical. But I think today's some of the experts can give shed some ideas and give some highlights, you know, on this disinfectant as well on the application. And I hope that the PCO can take benefit out of this webinar today. All right, thank you very much, Karen.
Great. Okay. Let's have a chat now with Mr. Ryan of Siquest Technology Sdn Bhd, a company who specializes in contamination control products in controlled environments. Mr. Ryan, can you take a minute to talk about what is contamination control and what is a typical contamination control plan?
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Karen, sorry. Yeah, what is contamination control? Contamination control is actually a term used to describe activities and efforts to contain and control the existence, spread, and growth of contamination through prevention and decontamination. So what is a typical contamination? It can be divided into two groups. One is the viable particles, which is pathogens and molds, and another one is the non-viable particles like dust and skin flakes. All right. So a very common term, infection control, used in the healthcare settings, is a subset of the contamination control and is relevant to healthcare and the general public settings. So, for example of contamination prevention in a healthcare setting is frequent hand washing for at least 20 seconds with hand soaps, wearing masks, wearing appropriate PPE, especially handling infected persons. A typical example of decontamination would be using antiseptic hand washes and hand rubs, for example, alcohol hand rub, after handling sick patients, and frequent disinfection with approved disinfectant chemicals. Or in a more progressive hospitals, you will see disinfecting equipments like ultraviolet robots, hydrogen peroxide sterilization equipment. So for general public, what is the best way to prevent infection? The best way has already been set out by the WHO, and they advise that we use frequent hand washing, and especially when you're touching a high touch area like the doorknobs, switches, you know, your car handles, the keys that you use, and the buttons on the lift, right? After you touch that, you need to really wash it or use a hand rub. And you can wear a mask if you are sick. Avoid crowded places, social distancing. I think this, we are very aware of it because it's been trumpeted by the government and the WHO. Okay, so for typical control program and plan, it would take a whole day for me to talk about it, but I'll focus on the decontamination cycle of it, which is the use of chemical disinfectants to contain the spread of diseases. So there are various types of chemical disinfectants one can use. We are a company that deal with US EPA products. So as you can see from the slide, the pyramid of the surface disinfectants, okay, the US EPA actually categorizes very distinctly what each chemical can claim to do, okay? At the bottom of the pyramid is what we call the sanitizer. A sanitizer is used to reduce, but not necessarily eliminate microorganisms from inanimate environment to a level that is considered to be safe enough to use. So alcohols, fortunately, can be used to kill the SARS virus. And above the alcohol level is the quaternary disinfectants, which is considered a low level disinfectants, followed by a phenolic disinfectants, which is considered intermediate level disinfectants. What is the difference between phenolic and quat is that phenolic tend to kill mycobacteria. That means TD pathogens. Okay, that is why they are considered an intermediate level disinfectants. But in certain formulations, a quat plus some alcohol mixture, you can also reach to be intermediate level disinfectants. And occupying on top of the pyramid is the sporicides. These are the very strong chemistry, usually oxidizing, like bleach, parasitic acid, hydrogen peroxide. These are able to kill almost all microorganisms, including the spores, right? Bacterial spores are hardest to kill because they form a hard shell outside. So most, in fact, alcohols cannot even enter the shell to kill it. So occupying on top of the pyramid is the sporicides. So what to use depends on what kind of, what product to use depends on what kind of microorganisms one wishes to control, right? For example, the food industry usually is sanitizer because you cannot use a very strong disinfectant. It's something that people ingest, right? So for FDA ruling, before any production, you need to use a non-rinse sanitizer to clean up the whole plant before it starts production, okay? But for hospitals, usually people use disinfectants plus an occasional sporicides, right? Sporicides is to be used sparingly because the chemistry tend to be very strong and might not be compatible to some materials found in hospitals. For home use, for the current pandemic prevention, it's better to use a validated disinfectant registered with a regulatory body. To note that actually MOH does not endorse or approve any surface disinfectant, all right? So lacking of that, what do you look for? What products do you look for? Preferably you should look for some products that are approved by a foreign body, right? Like US EPA and the UK DEFRA, okay? Because these are the regulatory bodies that MOH frequently look up to and find information for. So yeah, that's basically what about the decontamination plan. Thank you.
Thank you for that clear explanation. The chart especially gives a good overview of these chemicals types. Then can you please tell us more about the types of services which are provided by Siquest Tecchnoology? Is the company new in the life sciences industry?
Siquest Tecchnoology is the sole distributor of Steris products from the US. We are the sole distributor for the formulated chemistry range of products. Steris is a leading US healthcare and life sciences and contamination control product manufacturer. In US, it's pretty well known and well established in the healthcare setting. So what Siquest does is we provide professional consultation to clients on contamination control issues. In the past and now, we are focusing on the top level of the chain, which is the pharmaceutical industry, providing the contamination control consultation for them. And we thought that with this pandemic, a lot of misinformation are circulating around in the market. So we thought that we could share some of our expertise and advice to the PCO and the general public about what a good contamination control should be. So, and we are about 10 years experience in the industry. Thank you.
Okay, based on your explanation earlier on typical contamination control programs, would it mean that sterilants would be the best choice to use in killing pathogens because it is at the highest pyramid?
Um, it's not always the best, right? It is the most efficacious, and it kills the broadest spectrums of pathogens. Okay, what is best is actually what kills the intended pathogens. If you're going to kill COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2 virus, then you use a disinfectant that is most suitable for it to kill. Okay, of course you could use sterilants, but sterilants practically in practical applications is a very strong oxidizing agent. Okay, so it might not be suitable if you're talking about spraying the office, spraying on your wooden furniture, because it could actually discolor and stain this furniture. So there is efficacy consideration part of it, and there is a practical consideration of it. Okay, sterilant is not to be used frequently. That's my take. So for coronavirus, a validated disinfectant would be sufficient in killing them. If you can show me the hierarchy of susceptibility, Chris. You can see the pyramid here. On the top of the pyramid is hardest to kill, right? They're least susceptible. And at the bottom of the pyramid is the easiest to kill, right? The easiest to kill are the enveloped virus. What are the examples of enveloped virus? Like HIV, coronavirus, right? Followed by the bottom is vegetative bacteria and fungi. And the more difficult to kill are the non-enveloped viruses. Fortunately or unfortunately, coronavirus occupies at the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, that is why alcohol could kill it quite effectively. 60 to 80% is the optimal concentration to kill a rapid kill of this virus. Okay, so when choosing a suitable disinfectant, the US EPA has actually approved a list of disinfectants to kill the coronavirus. The scientific basis on approving, since there is no claim on COVID-19 yet, because the labs, the testing lab just don't have this sample to test on. So the reason why US EPA can approve certain disinfectants is based on the idea that if you claim to kill a higher level of virus, then the likelihood that you will kill coronavirus is there. It's very likely that you will kill a coronavirus. So for disinfectants that claim to kill any type of non-enveloped virus, a non-enveloped virus could be a big non-enveloped or a small non-enveloped. Right? A big one could be called like rotavirus. A small non-enveloped virus is norovirus, foot and mouth disease virus, parvovirus, and all that. If your disinfectant could claim to kill any of this virus, then the likelihood that you will kill COVID-19 virus is very high, and you're approved to use or to claim your product to be able to kill COVID-19 virus. So in answer to Karen's question, whether you just use sterilants, it's not necessary. You need to use sterilants to kill, okay? Any products that could claim to kill a non-enveloped virus could kill an enveloped virus based on this chart. Thank you.
I see, okay. Since that you mentioned US EPA, there's a question popping up here. There's an attendee who would like to know, is there any international agency which approves service providers to carry out disinfection services?
It's a bit contentious issue here because CDC, the Center of Disease Control in US and US EPA does not formally endorse disinfection service as in misting and fogging, right? Because they based on the recommendation should be based on scientific data. And COVID-19 is a novel virus. A lot needs to be understood from it, right? Initially, the WHO say it actually could not spread by air, right? It only could spread by aerosols. there's increasing evidence that it could spread by air. So for international agency, I'm not aware of any agency that actually approve fogging or misting in this case. But with the increasing evidence that this disease could actually spread by air and float on air, then it is prudent to do a disinfection service, especially if you are in a very crowded place.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your explanation. Since we have brought up the topic of pathogens, it's time to have a chat with our third panelist here. So it's an honor to have Colonel Dr. Nor Ashikin to join us at this forum. Dr. Nor Ashikin has 10 years of experience as an internal medicine specialist with a special interest in infectious diseases and military medicine. She is currently serving as a physician at the military medicine department at one of our nation's armed forces hospitals. Dr. Nor Ashikin, can you please take a moment to share with us about what is COVID-19 and how does it behave?
Okay, thank you, Miss Karen Lee. She's a very dear friend of mine. First of all, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And salam sejahtera to all. Thank you, Madam Chairperson, for the invitation to join the first ever webinar for me. So I'll try my level best to stay focused on the screen. I think by now everyone should know what is COVID-19. I would call COVID-19 as she. She's already 7 months and 7 days old. And actually she's originated from Wuhan, China. And maybe some of you know her parents is believed to be either a bat or a pangolin. Okay, pangolin is denggiling. Okay, she is originated from the mother virus, which we call coronavirus, which already mutated to a new breed virus, which finally named COVID-19. COVID-19 is actually a short form of coronavirus disease 2019. Okay, she's a bit nasty as compared to her other siblings, which are the influenza, the SARS virus, the H1N1, MERS-CoV. That's all her siblings. But these all virus cause respiratory tract or lung infection. As you can see on the screen, that's why I call she, because the virus looks so flowery and looks like a female. So that's a virus that you can see now on the screen. Okay, up until today, it has causes more than 5,000 deaths worldwide and also has infected almost 14 million people all over the world. Okay, the death rate worldwide is as high as 7%. But fortunately in Malaysia, our death rate is only 1.4%. And as of yesterday, 16th of July, there was only 3 new cases, Alhamdulillah. And the number of new cases has actually been plateauing to a single digit since 23rd of June 2020. So we are glad to hear that, and hopefully it will remain that, and finally no more new cases. Okay, having said that, 80% of the COVID-19 cases is actually a mild disease, which actually could range from being no symptoms, asymptomatic, to having a low-grade fever to high-grade fever, cough, sore throat, and maybe some body ache or joint ache, and also diarrhea. But one particular symptoms that related to COVID-19 is actually a loss of sense of smell and also sense of taste. That is actually very peculiar to COVID-19, which which cannot be found in other viruses. Okay, so if some of you might suddenly get a fever and cough, and suddenly you cannot taste or smell, so you might probably having COVID-19. Okay. Another 20% actually a severe disease. This we usually found in elderly, aged more than 60 years old. and those who having chronic diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, heart problems, lungs problems, kidney problems, and yeah, all the other chronic diseases. Okay, but I also like to share that this COVID-19, the nastiness of this virus is also, it took longer time to recover. Usually if you have a flu virus, you will like recover like for 3 days to maybe 1 week. But this virus, it will take like 1 to 2 weeks in mild cases, yeah. But in severe cases, it can take up to 6 weeks to recover, okay, before they can return back to their normal life. So that's how nasty COVID-19 is. Until now, unfortunately, there's no proven treatment for COVID-19, but there's numbers of medication that has been tried in the clinical trial, and what we call solidarity trial, which was an effort initiated by WHO, whereby our country is part of the team. In this trial, there are 5 drugs that is actually listed to be used in treatment of COVID-19. And these drugs are basically old drugs. It's not a new drugs, okay? One of the drugs is actually drugs to treat malaria. One of the drugs is to treat HIV infection. And one of the injection of the one of the drugs is in injectable form. It used to treat hepatitis virus. The trial is still ongoing. So far, since April until now, out of the 5 drugs, 2 drugs has been taken off from the usage because of no effect, no proven benefit compared to the standard treatment. Okay, and as for vaccine, the research are still ongoing in a few countries, namely China, Russia, and also European countries. And I believe they are in the late stage of clinical trial, and maybe sooner we'll get the vaccine to be used, maybe 1 year time, or maybe less than that.
Yeah.
Okay, I think.
Okay, great.
Do I answer you?
Yeah. It's a really good explanation because I learned a lot from what you have shared with us just now. But I would like to know, what is the mode of transmission and the long-term complication of COVID-19?
Okay, back to COVID-19. Yeah, she is actually mainly transmitted through droplets. Droplets is actually, what is droplets? It's actually a secretion from your respiratory tract, either mucus from your nose or from your saliva. Okay, in which when an infected person sneeze or cough, the droplets they produce contain the virus and can be transferred to the other nearby person. The nearby person, if he stand less than 1 meter distance, definitely he will get the virus if the person cough in front of him. Okay, that's why we have to maintain our social distance more than 1 meter. And the virus is also said to be stable for few hours, yeah, on the cold temperature. And some research say at freezing temperature also the virus can stay stable. Okay, there are few cases of COVID-19 which also can be transmitted through the feces, yeah, through the fecal oral route. There are few cases in which the infected person get diarrhea and they find the virus RNA in the feces of that person. But the risks are low as compared to the respiratory transmission. And also there's also risk of transmission through food. So be careful, through food as well as breast milk. Okay, but the risks are low as compared to the respiratory transmission. Okay, as for long-term complication, as we all know, majority of the infection is actually from it affect the lungs, whereby the lung tissue can get injured, and after a while, the injured lung can become scarring, or we call in medical terms fibrosis. Okay, if your lung gets scarred, it can never heal. Your lung get contracted like a dry sponge. Okay, So in severe cases, the virus also affect your heart muscle. Your heart can get weakened and cannot pump properly. We call in medical terms cardiomyopathy. Okay. Apart from the two main organs, it can also affect your brain. Okay. And in this case, even a simple infection, mild diseases, the patient can have muscle weakness or numbness over the fingers or feet. Okay, and in severe cases, when the virus goes to the brain, it can also affect the memory. The patient can become confused and they cannot concentrate properly, and they also have problems in balancing. To touch a little bit on the stigma of COVID-19 patient, majority of the patient were treated like a time bomb. After they recovered, they come back to the house, to home. Everybody stigmatized them. Nobody want to be near them. So that's added to another long-term complication to the patient himself, herself, which led to mental burden and later on caused post-traumatic disorder. In this case, if you don't treat the patient who having psychological stress, distress, the patient can later on develop major depression. That's quite common in our country, major depression. Not only from the situation, economic situation, it also can come from COVID-19. Okay, some other long-term complication to the children, where we rarely heard that COVID-19 affects children, but it does affect, but usually it's mild case, but some do have a severe case, like they have a weak muscle and they have skin allergy rashes in children. We see this a lot. And this is interesting for men. Some researchers postulate the virus also can damage the testes. Okay, and there are evidence the presence of virus in the semen, and this damage to the testes can affect the fertility of the man. So careful, all the speakers are men. All right.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Shiki. But you can run away because there's actually a question popping out here.
All right.
This attendee is asking, secret smoke would transfer pathogens from host to a normal person. So will that happen?
Definitely no.
Oh.
No. Unless you share the secrets.
Don't share the secrets.
If you share the secret, you give to your friends, then definitely if you have the virus, you can transmit to your friends. Okay. But the smokes cannot carry the virus. They are almost the same size, but the smokes is bigger size, but they cannot carry the virus.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Ashikin. And yeah, she's right. She actually is my dear friend. I know her since standard 1. Okay. So we really keep a very good in touch with Dr. Ashikin. But other than her, I have another dear friend of mine that is Dr. Leow. He is Dr. Leow Chiuan Yee. We went to the same university, and of course, that is a University Sains Malaysia. So he was majoring in biotech at that moment, and I was in entomology. Okay, and now he is a medical microbiologist, currently attached with University Sains Malaysia, and he's going to share with us his expertise on microorganism behavior. His primary research interest focuses on the understanding of the molecular basis of immunity associated with infectious diseases. The principal aim of his research is to identify potential vaccines and therapeutics targets for immunotherapeutic development, and we are proud to share with everyone that Dr. Leow is one of the candidates who represents Malaysia in the research and development of a vaccine for COVID-19. So Dr. Leow, apart from the nutritional components of microbe growth, can you please explain to us what are the common environmental factors which potentially affect the growth of microbes?
Thank you very much, Ms. Karen. Good morning to all the panelists and good morning to all the attendees as well. But thank you very much for Ms. Karen for the kind introduction about myself. And of course, Ms. Karen has been my good friend since 1999 back in University Science Malaysia, right? But today probably I'm not going to try to touch long about our relationship about this. But thank you very much again for inviting me to this good morning, this good forum. Well, back to your question, I would say that there are a couple of course, for the, maybe can I have a slide to be shared first? I can explain easily on how does it look like from the picture of the microorganisms. Thank you, Chris. Okay, here there are the structural differences of the virus and the bacteria as we found. So what we call this also like in a general way, we call them as a microbe as well, no matter they are virus, bacteria, fungus, as long as something, the size itself is smaller than 100 micrometers, we will call it as a microbe. So now today, because we are focusing on this, the SARS-CoV-2, right, like COVID-19 disease, so I want to share with all the attendees here about what's the difference between the virus and the bacteria. Like on the left picture, on the diagram here, of course, that is the structure of the current SARS-CoV-2. We may see that there's an outer layer over there. We usually call them as the lipid layer, which means that usually for today, all the disinfectants or most of the things I set for the sterilization using the heat, for most of the chemicals, we need to target on the outer layer, the lipid layer. So like back to on the right picture is a bacteria. So bacteria, it also has a common outer layer, like what Mr. Ryan mentioned just now. This outer layer also can be formed by the phospholipid. All right. So all the targeted chemicals also used to target against the outer layer of the bacteria. But difference between the virus and bacteria is virus usually considered as a non-living organism when it is on the air, or it needs host to replicate. Unlike the bacteria, it can be called as a unicellular, because it has their own mechanism, their own organelles, the functional organelles to generate the energy or generate the metabolism for them to surviving. So which means that for bacteria, usually they can survive itself when they are in the environment. Virus, they need a host to replicate. So this is the difference. Chris, can we go to the second slide, please? Thank you. Yeah, so I would like to mention for this question is the environmental factors and the transmissions as mentioned by Dr. Ashikin just now. Actually, there are a couple of them. For the environmental factor that we have been found from the literature, they can be involved of a couple of different factors. For example, like temperature or humidity. From the current study and the previous study for the coronavirus, or we call it as SARS or MERS, found in the Middle East, it was found that when the temperature or humidity keep increasing for a certain in a certain means, which means that it is going to deactivate the viability of the virus. So which means the higher the temperature or higher humidity, it could be a good impact to control for the viability of the virus. So for another part is like we look into the air transmission, it could be affected by the wind speed as well. From the literature, we found that, of course, for the virus, it could be usually if from the infected individuals, it can transmit the disease to an infected one through the droplets or we call it as a droplets or the aerosol after the sneezing. So the difference between the droplets and aerosol is the droplets itself, usually the size is much bigger, it's more than 5 micrometers for each of the droplets. Compared to the aerosol, it could be like less than 5 micrometers. But some studies the law of argue on this, whether the virus itself is considered as an airborne or not. But from the current study, it's found that the SARS-CoV-2, like the SARS-1 that found many years, about 10 years ago in Hong Kong, it doesn't belong to the airborne disease like chickenpox or the influenza. However, it can be transmitted through the droplets if, let's say, we have a close contact with one of the infected organisms. Okay, back to today also, there's another reasons, some studies showing that will it be possible that the virus could be transmitted through the insects? I think this is a very interesting point of today, because I know that a lot of us here today are made up of the PCOs. So we found that from the literature study, it doesn't have any proof yet to show that the insect could be a medium to transmit the disease. Unlike the dengue, it could be transmitted through the Aedes, because the dengue virus could reside within the system of the Aedes. But some studies, they postulate, or they try to make a hypothesis. They found that because of the droplets from the certain individuals, infected persons, if the droplets drop onto the surface of the mechanical carriers, insects, for example, like beetles of the domestic housefly or whatever, we don't know, it's not a housefly, but some domestic insect, it could be possible to bring the virus to the surrounding area. So it might be possible. So insect we need to be focused on as well. I think today, like what Mr. Ryan mentioned this morning, we need to focus a lot on the surfaces. The surfaces could be a lot. The surfaces, we have been found that, of course, like surfaces like the aluminum, the wood, and then all the tables that we have. These are, if let's say we have a close contact with them, so these are the things that we need to focus on, because the virus itself, the virus itself, if let's say in the environment, it could appear in the droplet together. So if let's say the droplets touch on the surfaces, the next person who is unaffected, they touch on the droplet, and they continue to touch in the mouth, their eye, their nose, or their eyes. So it could be having possibilities to introduce the virus into the next person. So the long story short, so the couple of the different factors could be affected. This one is about the heat itself first. If let's say we want to control the virus from the not replicating from the transmission, because replicating usually happen in the host. So of course we need to have a better ventilation system, which means that try to avoid from the confined space, where the ventilation system is not good. So the wind speed itself is one of the factors could affect the viability of the virus. So the first thing is about the heat. We need to have the heat area. So that's why you may, this is a kind of the observation, but nobody can tell the evidence yet. You may see the tropical region, the infection rate is much slower compared to the European or the climate, the like US or Australia, whatever. Another high or low pH. This is something where we need to control with the sanitizing that we use, or the disinfectants. Sunlight itself, and high humidity. Most important is a high wind speed. If let's say a room which is fixed, it's with a close confined space, actually is a good incubation hub for the virus. That's why you can see many months ago happened in the Petani Street that a lot of people, they get infected because people, they gather in the confined area. So let's say we try to make a lot of like outsiding activities with the good ventilation system, with the social distancing stick to practice, we can control this much better. Of course, disinfectants, we cannot avoid it. We must need to have sanitizing with us from time to time. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
So as what you have mentioned, just now you talk about the COVID-19. So
Yep.
it means the COVID-19 virus is actually transmitted mainly through close physical contact and respiratory droplets, which also makes airborne transmission possible. Am I right? So
Yep.
transmission of the COVID-19 virus has been linked to close contact between individuals in close settings such as households, health facilities, assisted living and residential institution environments. In light of this, what are the basic principles required for environmental cleaning and disinfection?
Environmental cleaning and disinfection, I think this is what we were told from the like WHO, the standard protocol already. I think what we practice here in our laboratory is so same, because we're working with a lot of different diseases, not only for, of course, we don't have COVID-19 here at the lab because this is something controlled, but we work together, we try to, but I mean, we still have the TB, we have our Clostridium study for tetanus, a lot of leptospirosis, so all this considered as a very pathogenic pathogens in the lab. So there are two different steps usually involved to control for this kind of the pathogens. from transmission. The first step, usually what we really encourage, this is something already suggested from the WHO and CDC. So what we need to do is we need to clean all the surfaces using the detergent first. First of all, we need to clean it with the detergent. Of course, the individual who involved in this kind of the training, they need to have a good PPE practice. So first, we need to clean the surfaces using the water or this detergent. Maybe Chris, would you mind to share me the third slide? I would like to share something with you all about this. Thank you. So because of why we need to clear off, because a lot we know in the markets now, they take they bring a fogging whatever, then they start to spray all around without without doing the proper cleaning. As we know, we look at this diagram over here, we know that a surface, for example, because we call it as a microbe, because the size of the microbe usually is smaller than in a micrometer. The virus could be from nanometer, and the microbe could be from micrometer. The range could be from 100 to 1,000 times different, comparing between the virus and the microbe. So what we mentioned, let's say we have a surface, aluminum surface. It looks very clean on top of it. Maybe it has some dust we can see, but we might not be able to see all the microbes that stick on the surface there. So the first thing we need to do is to clean off the biofilm. So what do we mean with the biofilm? Because usually we can't see the biofilm easily unless we leave it for some time so we can see it. So the biofilm actually is a formation of the combination of the different bacteria together. As you can see from the bacteria, once they adhere onto the surface, they will form together. All these bacteria, because of the survival, so usually they will secrete themselves, we call it as EPS, or extracellular polymeric substances. So for them to merge up together, this EPS actually they form a kind of the barrier to shield them from the stress from the external factors. For example, like maybe they try to keep themselves to stick onto the surface without wash off. And after time progressing, this EPS will keep enlarging, and it turned out to be like another phase. They call it as a matrix. So when this matrix is formed, there will be thousands or millions of different bacteria or viruses. They be coming together. They keep themselves in this kind of the incubation hub. All right. So when come to a certain extent, this come to the fourth step. This matrix will get enough of the virus or this kind of microbes, so the microbe will start to disperse from this matrix and turn out to be individual bacteria and try to go into another places to find their new colony again. So the thing is, what I want to mention about here is similar to like what we found the plaques in the certain individual, their teeth. If let's say they do not clean it properly, they do not wash it yearly or take care of it. Of course, the plaque we found in the teeth, this plaque actually is a kind of the example of the biofilm as well. It's caused by the Streptococcus mutans. So Chris, can we go to the fourth slide? I want to show some example about the biofilm. So this is a photo, of course, I get it from the Google image. It's showing that it is a biofilm that found in the most of the the toilets or the laboratory or the washroom. So because of the toilet itself has a lot of organic materials, right? A lot of organic can be formed by the debris from human secretion, excretion, blood, or whatever. Or as long as something, it can be used as an energy source for the bacteria as a kind of food. So this is a kind of the favorite material for them. So this is the toilet, usually toilets, kitchen. As long as they have a moisture, they have organic stuff, usually it's a favorite place for microbes to live on. For example, the aerosols here, you can see the pinky color over here, or the dark color for the C and D. These we call as a biofilm. So just imagine, if let's say this area, they are not properly washed off using any detergent, then they try to spray the disinfectant on top of it. To be honest, nothing will be killed at all. Nothing will be killed just because of all these things are still protected by a layer of the biofilm. Similar to the what we call it as like droplet. Of course, a lot of people saying that the virus itself, like SARS-CoV-2, probably can be the airborne, right? Of course, the airborne just happen if, let's say, an infected individual, they do their sneezing and the droplets still appear in the air for a certain time. However, there's no any literature or evidence to show that the SARS-CoV-2 can be kept in the air until certain time, because it's not like the measles or chickenpox or whatever. SARS-CoV-2 usually they are very fragile because of the lipid layer and the envelope layer also. They are very fragile. As long as is they're facing the kind of the heat, like for example, for certain time they dry off, the droplets has been evaporating, nothing left. So usually they will die easily. But the important thing is they can infecting the person easily just because of it has a very high affinity of their outer layer. We call it as the interaction between our human receptor ACE2 with one of their ligands on top of the lipids. That's why they can bind easily. But in the environmentally, usually the SARS-CoV-2 can be, or this coronavirus, we can control them easily, like what we control for other microbes as well, because it's not considered as like top pyramid shown by Mr. Ryan just now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Leow, actually there's a question coming from attendee from Indonesia. So he would like to know, how long can COVID-19 survive in the air?
Yeah, this is a very good question, because surviving in the air now still under very research. But we know that surviving in the air is different from one part to the other part. It could be because, as I said just now, there's no any evidence yet at the moment or literature to show that the survival of the COVID-19 in the air. But there has been some study to show that they could be survived on the surface of the aluminium, on the wood material, on fabric. The best survival rate still is found on the very smooth area, like the aluminium. Aluminium, they can survive up to like 4 to 8 hours, all right? Or more than, there's some studies showing that they can be surviving more than 24 hours also. But all these studies, they are done in the ambient temperature, which means that in the closed condition, meaning in the lab only. They are not doing it, they are not scratching it or get the collection from the environment. So nobody knows, correct or not? So in the air, of course, people know that we still need to be aware. If let's say certain people, let's say someone get infected, they sneeze, they do a sneezing, or they coughing, or they speak something, the saliva came out, the droplet from the mouth. It could be potentially be the air for about like 4 to 8 hours, depending on the where the where it is. So that's why we need to be aware. Of course, like just now I said, if let's say a confined area without a good ventilation system, it could be the longer the virus to survive, just because of the evaporations get slower in the confined area because of wind speed, right? Because wind speed can help to evaporate the droplet into nothing. But if let's say we don't have the wind speed, the droplet is still sitting there for sometimes. So the virus, which means they're still sitting within inside the nuclei of the droplets. So it can be up to hours. Yeah.
Okay, that's a very good answer. Okay, Dr. Ashikin, can disinfectant prevent us from COVID-19?
I think you can answer that right now. The answer is yes.
Yep.
As what was mentioned before by Mr. Ryan and Dr. Leow.
Yeah.
As for general recommendation for routine cleaning and disinfection of household, as what was mentioned just now, this basically just 2 steps. First, you do the cleaning. The gross thing that you see, you wipe it out using the your cloth, yeah, and then with water. And then once you cannot see already all the germs, dirt, impurities that you can see on the surface, then you start disinfecting. The disinfection, yeah, as what was discussed before, you can use many types of chemicals to kill the germs on surface. But this process, as what was mentioned, if you use the sterilants, the strongest one definitely will kill everything. But we usually don't use that because of the content is quite dangerous if you're exposed to your eye or your hand or skin. Yeah? But if you use the local, disinfectant, it will killing the germ after the surface is cleaning, and this can also further reduce the risk of infection. Okay, the 2 steps, just cleaning and after that disinfecting.
Okay.
Yeah, The community members can practice the routine cleaning frequently, as said just now, on doorknobs, table, light switches, handle, the toilet, the sink, with a household cleaner that's appropriate for the surface. Just follow the label instruction. I mean, you can use any cleaning liquids or detergents that is available. Label content instruction for safe and effective use of the cleaning products and the precaution you should take when using such products, such as wearing gloves, making sure you have a good ventilation, while using the products. And you also can consider, for electronics, you can consider use wipeable for the electronics. If you don't have anything, maybe you can just buy the wipes or spray containing at least 70% alcohol. That will kill the virus. And after you clean everything, you must wipe the surface dry thoroughly to avoid pooling of the liquids, which can also be the modes of virus to get to live lah. Yeah, so just disinfect and dry off the surface.
Okay, so does it mean that you need to do a proper donning and doffing to conduct disinfection processes?
Okay, as maybe can share the slides. Do you have the slides on the proper donning and doffing? Okay, this is basically the standard donning and doffing. As for donning, as you can see, basically first of all you wash your hand or sanitize your hand. Better to wash your hand with water and soap, and then you wear your gown, and then after that you wear your mask and goggle, and last your glove. And for doffing, the reverse way. I mean, you remove your glove, and then your gown, and then your goggle, mask, and then you wash your hand or sanitize your hand. This is actually to prevent any this is for respiratory protection and also for eye protection if you use your goggle. But during the disinfecting process, like if you want to do in the household, you can limit the usage of all these things basically by simply maybe asking the household, anybody of them have a fever or cough or symptoms suggesting they have a COVID-19. Maybe you can also go and do some screening temperature to the household because not necessarily you have to wear all these things. Maybe if you all the household members are healthy, you maybe just need a simple gown and a glove and maybe a mask. That's all. Is it clear?
Okay, great. I believe it's very clear. Okay, so Mr. Ryan, you mentioned before that Siquest is the sole distributor of Steris products. As I understand, Steris products can be used in disinfection. Can you please tell us more about Steris products?
Okay, we are the sole distributor for the formulated chemistry range of products. There are various types of chemical disinfectants that is available from Steris, ranging from sanitizer, alcohols, to low and intermediate disinfectants as well as sterilants. Our sterilants would be Spore Cleanse RTU. It is well recognized in the industry as the leading sterilant, at least in the pharmaceutical industry. And we have other range, like depending on the formula, like quartz, we have processed NTD, Coverage Plus. For phenols, we have Vespine and LPH, as well as our Septihol, our range of sterile alcohols. Yeah, all this can be used in the fight against contamination, decontamination. Yeah.
Okay, but what are the differences between Steris range of sanitization, disinfection, and sterilization products?
Sorry, I didn't get a question. What is the difference?
What are the differences between Steris range of sanitization, disinfection, and sterilization products?
Yeah, sanitization is a term that is used very loosely in everyday term, you know. But in EPA, categorizations, the sanitation does not have virucidal claims. That means usually it does not need to have antiviral claims. But certain disinfectants, when diluted further, can be used as a sanitizer, right? And depending on your usage, right, disinfectants can be used with, some are used as a ready to use, some are used as a concentrate to be further diluted. So the differences is the spectrum of kill of each chemical, right? The broadest being the sporicide or sterilant. And in between would be the quartz and the phenols and other formulas that might exist in the market. And of course, the sanitizer would be usually used in the food industry.
Okay. There is classification of sanitization, disinfection, and sterilization apply to other products that are available in the market today?
As long as they are US EPA registered, they have to adhere strictly to each categorization, right? For example, if you want to claim to be a chemical sterilant, and there aren't many in the market, in the US even, you have to show that you have to prepare and submit the documents and test data to the US EPA. EPA being the Environmental Protection Agency, you have to show that out of the 360 test samples, they only allow one failure. That means 359 samples have to be a complete kill, what we call the 6-log reduction, 99.9999% kill of spores. Okay, so in Malaysia, a lot of documents I see, MOH as well, they look up to US EPA for opinions. Right? US EPA is a key opinion leader in this field. But there's no classification in Malaysia on the claims that on whatever you can claim on your product. So which is a bit unfortunate, and so it results in a lot of fly-by-night suppliers and vendors making all kinds of claims, approved by KKM, Singapore NEA approved, and all that, which are not substantiated with any lab data.
Okay, great. Actually, we have some questions here regarding on the chemical. So there's one question asking, can they use Clorox as sterilization?
Yes, the CDC recommends bleach as well, basically because it's widely available, right? But with bleach, the thing is, I think Dr. Ashikin also mentioned, you need to clean the surfaces before you use the Clorox, because Clorox gets deactivated by organic matters quite easily, right?
Okay.
Either Clorox you can use, yeah.
Yeah, so yes, you can use Clorox, but I think maybe in the end of the session, we can hear more from Dr. Leow or Dr. Ashikin as well. So there's another question regarding on the certification. So does KKM certify and qualify disinfectant to use? Because actually there are a lot of self-proclaimed products that claims their products are certified by KKM. Yeah, I heard that too, actually. So a check with KKM, they don't give out list of disinfectants for use exactly, actually. So can we hear from Mr. Ryan on this KKM certification on the disinfection products?
I might have mentioned before, KKM actually does not qualify any surface disinfectants. Okay. However, KKM, the sub-arm of KKM, NTRA, approves the marketing of hand sanitizer as a cosmetic. And another arm of KKM, the NDA, approves hand disinfectant to be used in healthcare settings. That is the pre-surgical, pre-operative hand rubs and all that. But for surface disinfectants, there is no, KKM does not do that. It falls under the Ministry of Agriculture, but we talk about it later. But to answer you straight, there's no, HKN does not certify or qualify disinfectant.
Okay, there's one more question which is very interesting. I believe Mr. Ryan and Dr. Leow can co-join to answer this question. So this question is talking about the effectiveness of the disinfection. Some disinfectant companies using ATB readers and swabs to show their clients the difference of before and after disinfection. So how accurate is this?
Okay, it depends on what you want to test for. ATP is mainly test for lack of a proteinaceous residues on the surface, which bacterial might leave behind. Okay, it does not work on virus because virus does not have a DNA.
Okay, great. Let's move on to YAPS. So when the government started actually allowing businesses to operate, business owners had to follow SOPs that were issued out by the Ministry of Health, which is why our fifth panelist, Mr. Boh Tuan Sim, is with us to share his views on SOPs and standards. He holds a position as an honorary treasurer from Institute of Quality Malaysia. He's actually a third-party auditor for local and overseas certification bodies. So besides that, Mr. Boh was a technical committee on conformity assessment for 2014 to 2018 under Department Standard of Malaysia. There's actually a question about certification, Mr. Boh. Okay, so Mr. Boh, is there any specified ISO standard could encompass us in performing decontamination more effective way for public like us?
Morning, everybody. Basically, these ISO certifications at this moment does not have any standard applicable to public like us. However, it is for hospital sector, there are series of the specifications. This is what I can share with you.
Okay. What should we do in setting up a standard guideline to ensure public are protected from this pandemic? How can IQM play a role here?
Basically, to this, so many questions in the market, I also check a lot of questions from the forum. In order to create this, you need three parties, government, private, and those NGO or NPO. NGO means non-government organization or non-profit organizations. Three parties will join a force to form the so-called regional standard guideline to encompass the whole national practices. So at this moment in Malaysia, you know, every department is having their own policy. So you want to cross department to form a public standard takes time. When the department set up the committee, maybe the COVID-19 already over become COVID-20. So there will be a long story to talk. But for public initiative, basically IQM can advise any organizations that want to set up their industry guideline. We can follow to ISO guideline and referring to any international references. Regarding this current issue, basically we can go back to WHO or FAO as a basic, and also regional these medical organizations to guide all the method and also the criteria to do validation and also do verifications.
How about human resources training and competency? How could IQM assist in the decontamination method?
For human resource, this part, basically, we could take a first step to create our industry guideline to develop a standard for Malaysia and also for Malaysian, and develop these standards, and we show to the public how competent we could be. Basically, you can based on this ISO 17024 personal competency. You set up this standard and to qualify the all the practitioners in the industry.
Okay, there's actually question regarding on the certification because they claim apparently there are some disinfectants chemical certified by company like SGS. So do you have any comment on this of certification?
Oh, because this is open market, certain plus Malaysia government has no specific regulation mentioned that cannot put such claim. And also there's no so-called solid case reported to MOH saying that get to use this and then get another thing, then want to sue another one. So hardly to claim that this thing cannot be accepted or cannot be used because it's an open market. It's just only that when the case become very obvious, a lot of reported case to the authority, and the authority will file this case and open a committee to do investigations, and then will set out standard to take actions to further control. This is normally how the system works. So at this moment, whatever who claim is free for claim, but have to take the legal liability if there anything happens. This is what I can say.
Okay, so before I continue further, I would like to let the attendees know. Actually, I saw a lot of questions, but you divert it to the webinar chat. Can you guys please divert all your questions to the Q&A functions via Zoom? So it's easier for me to pick all the questions, and it will be benefit to everyone if I can throw all these questions to all the experts here. Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Leow, to my understanding, at the initial stage of COVID-19 outbreak, there were PCOs who treated SARS-CoV-2 with fumigation. Fumigation in the pest management industry is actually an advanced treatment in which the operator has to be a licensed fumigator, and the fumigant used is highly toxic. So, Dr. Leow, I would like to understand from your perspective, can fumigation kill such microbes? Was it the right approach to take in order to manage the COVID-19 outbreak?
Okay, thank you very much, Karen, for the good question. Yeah, I think fumigation itself is kind of the harsh chemicals to trying to treat against the insect survivor in the pest control, right? For sure that if there is certain complex organisms like insect or pests could be killed by the fumigations, usually, of course, it can be easily to be used to kill the virus or bacteria or whatever, or SARS-CoV-2 as well. But the key question here is whether it is highly recommended or not. To be honest, as we check on the like EPA from US or the CDC and WHO, actually they are not recommended for them to use the fumigation, especially those involve the harsh chemicals like formaldehyde or the methyl bromide. And there were some cases that in some previous studies, of course, for those they are not trained under the professionals, they were thinking that they can use a mix of the chemicals to try to kill them more effectively. For example, it's a mixture. If let's say someone mixed within the Clorox, the chlorine with the alcohol together, for example, ethanol or isopropanol, it will lead to the formation or generation of other new chemicals like chloroform. Chloroform itself is very toxic or hazardous. So this one need to be aware. Okay, we back to the fumigation again, because that we knew that a lot of people, they would use the fumigation on the misting for the disinfectant. Like I said just now, first of all, we must make sure the surface need to be clean first. All right, followed by we introduce the disinfectant in. And why the studies showing that the fumigation, especially involving the harsh chemicals, might not be suitable to be used as well, because it has a good potential to lead to the irritation against the eyes or the skin of the people who practice this fumigation around. And the other thing is, if let's say the fumigation is using like disinfecting chemicals, say for example like hydrogen peroxide or sodium hypochlorite, we need to ensure that how are they going to ensure that the zones that they spray on can be touched entirely by the disinfectants? As we know that to be for disinfectant to be working, the contact time, it need to be at least a minute, which means the wax need to stay there for a minute. So it will be enough to kill the microbes or the viruses sitting there for some times. All right. So there are key factors. One is it might be it might be some risk to the user if let's say they don't practice it well, if let's say they're using the formaldehyde, this kind of hazard chemicals. Also, if let's say after fumigation they're using the hard chemicals like formaldehyde, they probably will this formaldehyde will the residues will live in the premise for some times. So it might be not, the next person they want to come into the office or whatever. So it might be people need to calculate how long the harsh chemical will be evaporated. So in short, for fumigation using the harsh chemicals, it is highly not recommended. And the best way for the disinfectant, still we have to clean off the surface first using the normal detergent, followed by using the wipe or the scrubbing or the brushing. That's the best way. Yeah. Using the misting, it depends on the case. Misting, if let's say somebody can put the misting area close to the area, that's fine. But just spray onto the air, it might not work. It's just kind of waste only. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question coming from attendees. Yeah. Can we use titanium dioxide for long-term disinfectant?
Titanium dioxide.
Yeah.
I think this good question. I think we can refer to Mr. Ryan as well. He probably has this kind of the ingredient, the chemicals with his company, right? I'm not pretty sure. But there are a lot of the different chemicals can be used, to be honest, to kill this kind of vulnerable virus like SARS-CoV-2. Why I call it as a fragile or vulnerable, because when it, as I said, when it come in itself before infecting the host, they're very poor. They hardly they don't have certain things to protect themselves. Just a very thin layer of the lipid outside the things. So I don't think so. We can just use like normal like alcohol. What's the best way? Let's say alcohol is not suitable to be used for the office or because have the carpet fabric, right? We can use other kinds can use the certain chemicals or disinfectant contain the hydrogen peroxide. Of course, the titanium is one of the choice. Also is categorized under the quaternary, right? Is it right, Mr. Ryan?
Quaternary.
The quat.
Can I add in?
Yep.
Titanium dioxide, I think what the questioner is asking is the nanoscale titanium dioxide. It's quite a novel ingredient and it's inorganic. So the long-term effect is not known, okay? Especially whether it can be absorbed into the skin because it's a nanoscale size. And FDA and EDA does not endorse titanium dioxide. But it does have its antimicrobial properties. Whether can it be used long term, we don't know. There's no data showing that. Is it harmful or is it not harmful?
Yeah, right, Mr. Right. I think one more thing that we need to add in is because this titanium dioxide, we do not have any literature to show that it could be work effectively against viruses, especially against the SARS-CoV-2 as well. Because right at the moment, I think from the CDC and WHO, they still recommend like usage of like the alcohol, H2O2 or certain kind of the quaternary material. We call it quartz. Yep. But like sodium hypochlorite, or we call it chlorus in Malaysia, also is considered as one of the effective. But the thing is, the bleach itself, because it's oxidizing agent, we have to use it according to the manufacturing advice, because sometimes we will do the discolorization or we will damage the furniture at home as well. Yeah, because of they're corrosive.
And I would like to add, it's not recommended for fumigation. Bleach, just use as per label instruction.
Okay. So actually, this one is very related with what Dr. Leow has explained to us just now. There's one question asking about the surface disinfection, which they use a sprayer to spray on the surface, basically. So the chemical that they're using is hydrogen peroxide and silver iron on wood. So how effective is it?
Okay.
The material is good.
The material is, to be honest, the chemical itself has no problem on this because hydrogen peroxide is quite a strong oxidizing agent. With the silver nitrate has been proven that it has antimicrobial, like antivirus and antimicrobial. So it usually is a good combination between the H2O2 and the silver nitrate. Against the wood, this one have to depend on what kind of wood it means. If let's say the wood itself is like a smooth wood, it has a it is not like the wood that has a lot of like holes or gaps there, right? So it works. So this one is depend on the surface they try to spray on. If let's say for the furniture that we use at home, usually it looks like smooth because they are already painted or whatever, treated with after from the factory, right? So that's why it works. Let's say they try to use the disinfectant to try to spray on certain kind of like certain wood, they have a lot of gaps, a lot of holes over there. So this is a key point. To be honest, this is one thing that we come across so much. But that's why when you come into the manufacturing or you come into the laboratory settings or hospital, usually the setting we call it as like a very special design. We try to avoid from the deep curve, or we need to try to move it in a smooth area on top of the ceiling or on the floor. So this is to avoid from the organic compound or the bacteria or virus that has a chance to come into reside onto the area. Yep. So for back to the question again, when doing this disinfecting, if let's say the wood itself has the area itself is very rough, not smooth at all, so we need to be aware. The contact time and the concentration need to be controlled equally. Yeah.
I see. Okay.
I would like to add also, depends on the concentration of hydrogen peroxide. So I don't know what is the percentage of your said product that the attendees is asking. If it's 6%, then definitely no. You'll find your whole furniture becomes white color. Okay. At 6% concentration, that's what the hairstylist bleach your hair before do coloring. Okay. So no. If it's 3%, you can try on a small surface and see whether it discolor or not. But there's very little data to show the efficacy on a wood surface.
Okay, but Mr. Ryan, there's one more question now for you. So it's regarding on the food industry. So the attendee is asking, for food industry use, would you recommend alcohol or quaternary ammonium to be used for sanitation? Sanitization.
Both can be used. Both can be used. Certainly, alcohol would be very much more expensive to use because you need to use 60 to 80%.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ryan, because this is like a very hot question. Can you please speak louder? Maybe put the mic clearer. Okay, thank you.
So both can be used. Of course, if you use alcohol, it'll be a very costly affair because you need to use 70% to 60% is 80% alcohol to be effective. But a quaternary ammonium compound would be sufficient according to label. If it's going to be used on a food contact surface, then you need a good rinse with water after use.
Okay, but that's another question coming in again about these disinfection services. Is it correct that without surface wiping with sanitizer or disinfectant, disinfection may claim ineffective? Do you get the question, Mr. Ryan?
Oh, okay. Really, at the end of the day, you need the wiping action combines the chemical sanitation plus a mechanical removal of whatever contaminants on the surface. The reason why people use fogging or misting is to reach those areas that cannot be reached by wiping action alone. So they are complementary.
Okay.
Okay.
I believe for this question, maybe we get Dr. Noor Ashikin. Okay, she's still around here. So can you please advise the attendees how often for sanitation in public area such as malls, schools, and shopping mall? We know that the government come up with SOP, but from your perspective, how often do you think a sanitation has to be done?
It should be done on the daily basis. Okay. If it's possible, it should be done. For example, if it's in a food store or a restaurant, it should be done after a different customer change. if it's possible lah. If it's not, it should be on the daily basis. That what we try to do in our hospital every time after the clinics finish, the disinfection process will carry out.
Yeah. Okay. Great. This one I think I need to dedicate it to Mr. Ryan. So for your information, in our industry, we are very get used with the word AI, active ingredients. So this there's a question asking about the disinfectant. Which disinfectant-based AI has the highest residual activity? So I believe it bounced back to your triangle. Am I right?
Usually certain chemicals does leave residual activity. It might not become bactericidal, but only bacteriostatic. That means it inhibits the growth of bacteria, right? There is no studies to show which one has the largest residues, right? And certainly we do not want disinfectants to have a very long residues because there's no data showing it might be harmful to human health if you have long-term exposure. An example would be formalin and formaldehyde, which has a very long residues effect. So, but it is carcinogenic. So we try to avoid chemicals that have very long, has long residual effect.
I see. Okay. So let us get back to disinfection services. Okay, even though performing such services are not harmful for operators, the pathogens itself still pose a significant risk. So Engineer Hisham, I would like to listen from you. Does the NPMA and MOH have working guidelines to assist operators in conducting such treatments? What are some of the elements that needed to be considered in such guidelines?
Thank you, Karen. Basically, if I refer back to your question, I think Mr. Boh has already mentioned briefly on the SOP actually. Guidelines is similar to SOP. So one initiative that we have done in the early April is that we have emailed to the CDC, I think under the Department of Disease Transmitter Division, that we propose SOP for disinfecting service at the internal areas of private and commercial property. Because all the while that what we have is generally is a disinfecting services at the common areas, in the public areas, but none on the for the private and for the internal areas. And the issue, I think there's the two, we were talking about just now using alcohol, and the other one is using disinfectant that contain bleaching properties. So for external areas is fine, but we are quite concerned if we were to do disinfecting at the internal areas. So we have written to them, and Chris, if we can share the next slide. They have responded back to us, and basically they say that they have already an existing SOP or guidelines written for this type of premises, and it is under the purview, I think, under Jabatan Kejurutan of this engineering department of this relevant agency. And I think the SOP and the guidelines meant for facility management company that is dealing with sanitation as well as the cleaning services at the hospital. So having said that, I think we will follow with that guidelines, but I see no harms that, like Mr. Boh says, that we need to collaborate between the government agencies that are directly overseeing this, as well as the NGO, that is us, and also you guys, the expert in the material as well as the product, to come up with a more detailed studies and proper SOP on this. All right. So I hope I answer you, Carol.
Yeah. So are there plans where these services will require training and licensing similar to fumigation-based services? What targeted timeline are we looking at to have such a SOP in place?
Of course, obviously, we are preparing to have this certification and training done. But having said that, we have to look the other perspective that we have already PCO or pest control operator license, at which every one of us who are in the pest control has to undertake this examination, and once we pass, we have the license. There is, of course, under the purview and under the regulation of Ministry of Agriculture, under the Pesticide Board. But disinfecting services is literally a different ball game, because the disinfectant itself falls under the purview of MOH, whereas the application, we are still working on the SOP and the guidelines. So to answer you, basically, of course, we can come up with this certification program, all right? But I think there should be a regulatory body that give us, that oversee the whole thing, because some of our members also question that whether unlicensed or PCO who has no license can do this type of disinfecting service. So to answer that question is that no, because they are free to do whatever they can do, because they are not dealing with the pesticide. They are dealing with disinfectant, which is not under any licensing by any authority. So I hope I answer you, Karen.
Yeah, so let us talk more about that as what you
Yeah.
mentioned, because I would like to know what is the industry acceptance level with regards to disinfection services are being conducted by non-PCO players, because there are a lot of non-PCO who are doing a disinfection, and they are concerned because disinfection treatments actually pose a risk to the public and to the persons conducting the treatments due to the exposure to chemicals and pathogens themselves. So as a voice of the industry, do you think the association should play a role in lobbying for disinfection services to be a controlled service that requires governmental approval similar to how pest management services are currently regulated? Can you please enhance more on that?
The words lobbying involve a lot of money, yeah. So okay.
Sponsor. For the sponsor.
Okay, if I can, just on the sideline, basically, earlier on we were talking about essential services, whether or not the PCO is basically part of the essential service, because they say in the US the PCO is considered as essential service, and of course it takes a lot of money to lobby to being an essential services in the US. So this is the same basically ball game. We need to lobby the agency, the relevant agencies, to have this licensing and certification. But let's differentiate. Why on the first place pest control operator need to be licensed? Number one is basically we are dealing with pesticide, having active ingredient, and the pesticide is basically very highly toxic agent. Therefore, the pesticide itself to be licensed, to be registered, and the one who apply it, which is the PCO, need also to be licensed, something like license to kill. All right. As opposed to disinfectant, basically it's a readily to use substances that can become a consumer products, easily available to any other. You wouldn't want to license makcik or pakcik who bought the disinfectant over the shelf, you see, to use that product. So it's totally a different scenario. But along the way, until vaccine is discovered, these services will be ongoing, right? So therefore, we need to take the initiative to at least not licensing, but certifying the applicator who's using this disinfectant. Now, just now, Dr. Leow mentioned about fumigation. Let me touch a little bit fumigation, the difference between licensing for pest control operator and licensing for fumigation practices. These are two acts that basically governing the pest control operator. One is under the Pest Control Operator Rules Regulation 2004. Fumigation is under the Fumigation Hydrogen Cyanide 1953, which was revised in 1981 to include methabromide. Now, can we do sterilization with metabromide or any other fumigants? No, we are not, because as a licensed fumigator, we know that, of course, fumigant kills everything, but it requires basically exposure period. And fumigant, as opposed to disinfectant, has no antidotes. Once you are exposed with no proper PPE, that's about it. All right. So one licensing, that is hydrogen cyanide, metabromide act, has already governed that. So now we are looking in 2020 having another license. No, I think we are looking more for certifying and also accrediting somebody who's doing the disinfecting job. So I think we can get together, sort this thing in details out, and maybe we can come up with something for the industry in the future. All right. So that's in the pipeline, of course, Karen. Thank you.
Great. So how about IQM, Mr. Sunshine, do you want to give some words on this standardization terms?
A part of this, what this president mentioned, that basically we should go another way around to change the image of what we say PCO previously was, and future we need to become a professional, even more so-called platinum grade of the services, whereby what the president promoting, that he certified them. So IQM could assist the association to develop this so-called competency standard, whereby currently IQM having this MRCA, Malaysia Registered Certified Auditor, which is supported by Mampu Malaysia, Kerajaan Malaysia, in order to tender any project, government project, you need to have Mampu approval. With our this MRCA approval, consultant status to get all the Mampu transformation project. So with our experience, definitely we could create another level to all those guys claim that they are so super to do the disinfections, and we can create a standard to let the government to accept us. Because if you want to let government to create a standard, takes time, because quota not enough, no standard will be developed. Then we have to develop a standard and let them to accept, because this is the way how we change the game. We wait them to come, takes time. So I think can help you all.
Okay, does that mean, is it considered like a in-house standard?
You can create an industry standard, and then with this standard established, we can propose to the ministry to adopt it. With this method, we much more easier. If you want us DG to organize a meeting, takes months to call all committee to meeting. So we all create our meeting and then create our standard, and we propose to the DG. The approval process will be much more shorter compared to we ask them to call us in.
Okay, I believe this is a very interesting discussion. From a chemical perspective, we are moving into a standard and regulations. So thank you to all the panelists who have spent this morning with us. So we are now going to take the time to answer questions from the floor. Chris, can you please bring us through all of the questions?
Yeah, hi. Okay, thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone. So I think quite a number of the questions have been answered during the course of today's forum, but we do have 2 open questions still. So I'll just read it out for everyone, and then the relevant panelists perhaps could answer. So I have a question here from Mr. Tuanku Faiz, who is asking how effective is disinfection of road and outdoors, corridors and things like that. Is it effective? Is it effective in order to do that? Yeah.
I think the WHO has categorically published on their website that says that this does not work. It's a futile attempt to control the pandemic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Okay, so that's answered. So I have one question from Mr. Belvin Lee. So his question, I will read it out. He says, we understand that, that the unreachable points like height, for example, right, there are places that are unreachable. So however, there are disinfection work being carried out without wiping, especially on high touch areas. And some vaporizers or humidifiers are being used or introduced into the market with thick smoke to cover designated space. So I think this is in relation to those unreachable heights, right? So is this misleading that the space that is covered with smoke is treated against COVID-19? No, yeah. So I think maybe Mr. Ryan can answer this question, and also I think Dr. Leow and also Dr. Ashikin. This is something that I think maybe you guys can look at answering. Yeah.
Well, there's a concept calling the contact time, right? Certain disinfectants require a longer time in contact with the high touch areas. And yeah, you certainly need to leave a certain time for the chemicals to touch. But the question is whether does the smoke actually cover the high touch areas sufficiently or not. And of course, the wiping action would be wiping off the residues that might be harmful for humans' touch. And it's, in my opinion, a necessary thing to do.
Yeah, okay. So I think that's all the questions we have right now, unless there's anyone else on the floor. So yeah, I think we can safely close today's session. So before we close, I'd like just to thank the panelists. Thank you for making time to come this morning, and for all the attendees as well for taking out time on a Friday to just come in and listen and to also ask questions to various experts here. So before we close, I'd just like to share with everyone that in collaboration with the partners X-Way and Siquest, together with the support of MPMA, there will be a free training. There'll be pre-training sessions sponsored by Siquest. So these are the topics on the screens. If you can see, starting on Friday next week, on the 24th of July, there'll be a session on COVID-19, prevention is better than cure, and on Thursday on August 6th, as well as Friday, August 7th. So you will be, so the first session is free for everyone, whether you're an MPMA member or whether you are from overseas or local. But the remaining two sessions, there will be a small fee that will be chargeable. So MPMA members get it for free, but if you are a non-member, it's RM50 per pax and USD 20 for overseas participants, okay? So there is a hard cap on participants. So Zoom can take 500 participants. So there will be limited space, but I think 500 is more than enough for everyone. And also there is no limit onto the number of participants from an individual company. So let's say you are with organization A, you can send as many as possible as long as there's space available during the registration. Yeah. So I think that's about it for today. Thank you again. Thank you again for coming. You will receive details about the training in coming days. So tomorrow there is already a scheduled emailer that will go out with the links to each session so you can register for it. Yeah. So once again, thank you everyone for coming. We appreciate everyone's time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, everyone.
Chris.
But probably I have something to mention before we close up, can I? Because since we have some different, because a lot of people ask me this key question. Hello?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Or just a quick question, because I think the market now sometimes, but not the people I mentioned, because certain people, they get confused with the word of sanitizing and disinfecting and sterilizing. So a lot of companies, they claim that the products using sanitizing, but they use it for disinfecting, or they use disinfecting used for sanitizing. So I think we need to clarify, since we have all the people here, the sanitizing actually is used for our skin, something like that, of course. But usually it's not a harsh chemical like alcohol or normal, very low concentration of the hydrogen peroxide. But the disinfectant is used against the non-living objects only. So I hope that our today attendees, we can catch the meaning. So in the future, when the certain brand, they come up with something, so we know how to tell the difference. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Maybe the association can do a promotions, can give a free speech, and then establish a standard to promote everybody what is A, what is B, what is C, so that everybody know how to do and make a right choice.
I'm arranging meeting with Jabatan Standard sometime next week because we are working on our termite existing termite standard. So maybe I'm hoping that I can bring this up to Jabatan Standard where they are keen to come up with a technical working group or not working on this certification program. Because for termites management, termites control, we do have our Malaysian standard. So having said that, probably we can come up with another one for this, decontaminate or this infecting services. Just for a thought.
So, President, you need to message to the Jabatan Malaysia, especially for public use, cannot for hospital. If not, they will thought they go hospital and then waste our effort.
True. It's a matter of following up actually, because as we mentioned just now, COVID-19 is here to stay. I think we need to come up with something, some action plan, but we need to get to the authority whether or not they are able to sit down with us together, because as far as we're concerned, Dr. Noor keep rejecting our calls for appointment up till today.
But President, you need to contact to this KKN and also DCA to support you, because Jabatan Standard Malaysia is just a coordinator. They are not able to make any decision on the standard. You still need authority and the expert. Jabatan Kimia, Kementerian Kesihatan, DCA department.
Yes.
Support, then you get DSN to get a committee done.
True. Because when we develop the Malaysian standard for termites control, termite management, we involve, in fact, people, the end user like JKR, even the pesticide board people on the rules, and also Malaysian Crop Life for the pesticide. So it's a working technical group. So basically, we need to propose the members, and the most important is for them to come up with funding. But as I heard that Khairi Jamaluddin appropriates certain amount of funding for the, for this year, for the development fund actually. We definitely will go for coffee after this, Boh.
Okay. So if there's no more any question, I think that's the end of our forum here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
The panelists. Yeah, we'll catch up one day for a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Okay, will do. Thank you. All right, you guys take care.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.